Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session Recording 161. What are we doing with our days? My name is Dani Beaumont and I'm a product manager on the Adobe Muse team. I am joined today by some folks from our engineering group, Dave Stevens. He's a terrific, actually the manager of the team. So it's great to have him on board. There's also some great folks in the community that are here that help develop templates and extensions for the product. I see Chris Callett out there in the crowd. So the structure for our sessions tends to be that you are welcome to talk about whatever you'd like in the chat. If you have questions about using the tool or for the community, it's a great time to do that. This is kind of a vetting process. We call it a jam session because we need to learn from you as much as you learn from us. So it's a chance for us to hear what you're concerned about, any questions that you have. At the same time, I will be presenting. In the session that we're covering today, I'm going to switch back. Actually, let me open up that pod real quick. Okay, so I asked at the top of the hour here what we would like to cover. I'm going to take a quick screenshot of the pod results, and this will be what I'm going to focus on kind of in order of priority as we go through the session today. If there are questions that you can think of that you want to shout out, go ahead and do that. If you have things you'd like to cover. Also, I'm always looking to gather up better tips and tricks. So if there are ideas that you think are handy, shortcuts that you've come up with, donate them into the chat. That would be really terrific for us as well. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okie doke. So let me begin. I don't always begin this way, but I think there's a lot of value to it with the resources that are available to you for Muse. So the world has evolved around social quite a lot, especially for Adobe. As we've gone to subscription, we iterate and are updating Muse 3 or 4 times a year. We just celebrated our 3rd birthday in May, and we also are preparing our 12th update to that product. That's a lot of updating in just a 3-year time window. And as such, the world of social media is actually evolving quite a lot for us. So if you haven't done so, I encourage you to follow us on Facebook or Twitter. That's a great way to hear what's happening. We do promote certain things here each week. One is Widget of the Week. And the idea is to raise awareness for what's out there in the widget portfolio. And I kind of go hat in hand each week to some of the widget providers and request that they either share a widget that's been for free, that's little known in the community and is powerful, or a widget that actually costs money and reduce that price for a 24-hour period. So Pacific Standard Time, Wednesdays at noon to Thursdays at noon, a widget will be in the widget directory and free of charge. This week's widget is flipping boxes, so kindly donated from Muse Themes. And it's a fun widget that just allows you to use animation to flip containers. So definitely show your love to those widget developers that are donating to the cause by visiting their sites and letting them know what you think of their content. Another great place to hang out is muse.adobe.com. So it is a microsite. It was originally kind of dog food for us. It gave us a chance to use Muse to build out Muse sites. The landing page tends to be a showcase of the latest features. So clicking here or just coming to muse.adobe.com. We're in the midst of preparing for another release. So we've got a terrific new landing page in the works. I'm in the throes of that right now. A great place to come if you're new to Muse is the tutorials area. We have a section on what's new as well as learn more. When there are videos or an article, I link to both of them. We, a little while ago, set up a YouTube channel simply because we wanted to make sure there was a dedicated place that you could find all of the videos that were relevant. So this fresh area here is a series of really short YouTube videos. Also, if you're here watching, obviously you're here live during this Connect session, but if you're listening to the recording, we've gone ahead and are recording both the Connect instance, so what we're watching right now immediately, but I use another tool to record an MP4 that's higher quality. The YouTube channel is a great place to go there. If you want to watch these recordings on an iPad, for example, and then practice the work on your Mac or PC, you can do that because YouTube allows you to play on iOS devices. So that's been pretty popular and has been up and running for a couple months. Besides that, I did want to give a shout out to a new template provider that just went live, I think, today. So it is musetemplatesToUse.com. And there's a good set of 10 restaurant templates for $10. I think their goal is to continue to, each week or month, I'm not exactly sure, go ahead and continue to add content there. Which sort of lends itself to another project we've been working on that I wanted to talk about, and that's starter files. This is something we've worked on. The specific intent to the starter files has been brand new Muse users that have just used Muse for the first time. Maybe they're in a free trial mode, and they can't quite get their head around the power that Muse offers. If you go to other tools like Wix or Squarespace, they tend to have finished sites. WordPress, another example, where you come to a finished design and then skin or style that design. The intention with starter files, to be clear, is not in any way to try to compete or knock any of the template providers out of the market. It's really to nibble a little bit at the bottom to make sure that within Muse, when users work with the file and they're new, they have something they can get started with to understand the power of the tool. And I actually would love a little bit of feedback. We've got 5 of these files. You are welcome to download them, use them. You can teach with them. You can train people. You can take your own sites live with them. It is a donation to the community. But if you go to the exposure example here, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat because I wouldn't mind just feedback before we really push this to a much broader crowd. See if I can get back to connect here. And the area of particular focus, I would say, is this exposure template. So if I preview this in the browser, working with actually Ali Pordelli, he built out these templates. So he's cookie.com. And he's also helped me build out some cute little tooltips here. And the idea is that if you are new to Muse, don't know what you're doing, I don't really need to teach you how to use Muse, how to necessarily build a slideshow from scratch. What I'd like to do with these starter templates is teach a new user how to just come in and customize it. So we have sort of in-app or in-browser help here that includes some streamed videos that really quickly come in and say, hey, if you've got a color swatch, how do you customize the swatch to colors that you'd like to use and update the site? So I'd welcome feedback from folks out there. We're about to put this same kind of help system into all of the starters. But this is staged and available for you to look at and let us know what you think. You can send mail directly to me. If you're in the private pre-release, we have a thread going around that. So appreciate any help and support in that area. From there, if you go to the adobe.com website and go to the products area for Muse, there is a really nice, rich library of content here. So on the Muse page, if you click on the Learn and Support tab, there are many, many bits, not just from the Muse team, but from the community as well. So the Show All Tutorials area down here is terrific. I guess lastly, the place to get help also for the application is within the application. So when you open up the welcome screen, depending on actually which country you're in and which language you're in, unfortunately it's a bit of a trial in English mode right now. But go ahead and check and see if your welcome screen does come up with some tabs or little starter bits here. This tends to be consistent with the content on that CC Learn area that I just showed you, but it's in the application. It will update pretty dynamically, and as we add new content, you'll notice that we're reflecting the 2015 details and releases for the release here. We'll continue to expand on that. Another great place to hang out, let me go ahead and open up a file, and I'll show you one more bit of help and support that I think is relevant. So let's go ahead and use the starter files. I'm going to go ahead and just play with one of those starter files, or not. Let's see. That's the good part of life when you're working with the beta, is that everything is in a beta form. As I mentioned, we're working on a new release. So I'm going to go to another one. Okay. So we'll go ahead and use the good Ike's Bikes example. As I'm working, what you'll notice is depending on what I'm doing in context of that work. Let's say I want to understand more about how the fill panel works. It's new to me and I don't understand this scroll area. What you'll notice is in the application, there's merit to really paying attention to this. There are question marks all over the place in relevant panels. If you click that question mark, the real magical part is if English is not your first language, if you are running your system and running the Muse application in another language, this help system in the back is going to go ahead and bring up a localized version of each of these articles. So the in-app help, it seems to be loading a little bit slow here right this moment, but this help would automatically switch to an appropriate language based on all the languages that we do support within the application. So a nice little tip there if you want them localized. All right, that's been a lot of fun. Let's go back to that list of features that we're going to focus on now. And again, I'm going to start with probably the highest rated ones and go backwards. So first on the list is using styles for scroll effects and graphic effects. This one is just something that I don't tend to think about as I'm working. Let's say I come to a site and we've got this bicycle image here, right? So you'll notice that the image is layered behind other content. And when I click on the image and go to my scroll effects, there has been a scroll effect applied here. So it's coming in and scrolling at 1x speed of scroll in a particular direction. It may even, if I look here for a moment, this is always some of the dissection with scroll effects. It's got, to be honest, this scroll motion here, because it's 1x the speed of scroll, it's not really affecting it. So this is not where scroll effects is really being applied. If I come under the fill drop-down and click on scroll, notice this is where, because the object is actually filling the container, that allows you to, in some cases, not in this case, but it allows you to define 100% width objects so that they'll span the width of your browser as the content is scrolling. That's why some folks tend to do that. I've got an image that's filling the container here, and I've got scroll motion applied. One of the hard parts of life, if you ask me, is especially for a fill scroll effect, to try to remember what you've got here. I often take a screenshot, copy it, paste it into Muse so that it's persistent enough for me to apply it to another object. Let's take a quick look at how that effect is working just so that we're on the same page. So if I come in and preview in browser and scroll down on the document, I've probably broken it here. I've got a very odd scroll effect applied. So let's, for a moment, because it doesn't really matter, pretend that this is exactly the effect that we wanted to achieve. The nice part about using styles is that it's very easy to get something perfect and then apply it across other objects. So yeah, I know, pretend we thought that was ideal. What I'm going to do is come into my graphic style. So if I pull down under Window to my graphic styles here, I can come in and you'll see for this Ike's Bikes example, we're using quite a lot of graphic styles. But I can come in and save that style that has scroll effects applied to it and apply it to other objects. So basically come on in and say very odd scrolling. And you'll notice here in the graphic style options, I can see exactly what's being captured. So their exact scroll effect on that object is going to be captured there. I could then come in and, probably to keep things a little bit the same, I'll come in and create a container. I'll just draw it off on the side here. I'm going to pull down on file to go into the scroll area. Well, let's go in and first grab an image. So I'm going to go to the Ike's directory of images here, grab something new. So I've got this nice sprocket image. I'll go ahead and have it scale to fill the container. And while I'm there, notice that there's nothing applied to scroll effects at the moment. When I come into those graphic styles, I can now apply a very odd scrolling behavior to that object. Interestingly enough, that style is inheriting not only the scroll effect, but the actual fill image. So probably what I would do is go ahead and grab the object, apply the scroll effect, and then come on in and grab my image. So instead of that masthead bike, I'll grab that sprocket bit set it as scale to fill, and now both objects will have this very odd scrolling effect applied. Now that's terrific for scroll effects. I know, just to give a little bit more relevance here, if you go to that microsite again, the tutorials area here, and let's say we go to resources, there was, there's a saying, plumbers have the worst pipes, which is that they're so busy out there fixing everyone else's pipes, their own get a little bit old. The microsite was designed probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It could use a refresh, but it's not happening anytime soon. So back in the day, we were showing scroll effects. And notice how I have sections here that kind of stay in place. So I've got Muse Video and Books. And as I scroll up, very subtly, the next category blends and then replaces the first category. It was kind of cool back in the day, a little trite at this point. But a way that I kept myself from going crazy with that was to define it as a graphic style. And as I added each new category, I could come in and apply it. So things like that, elements that are reoccurring and you have a very precise definition, graphic styles can be terrific. Another way that I really like graphic styles is being able to apply color to images. So this is another checkbox on that list. But let me show you it rather quickly. I'll come on into, let's try to grab a different page, or I'll just come in and grab a new page here. Keep life simple. So I'm going to come on in there. Now when you look at working with icons, you'll notice I've got some social icons up here. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. So I've zoomed in really tight on these. I've got Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, I think, is there. Now, they are images, and there's a real trade-off, I guess, that you want to stop and think through depending on what your intention is. If you're building out a site and you're not sure of the color palette, you want to experiment with that color palette in Muse, placing social icons as images gives you the advantage of being able to apply color for objects using the color swatches in an inline glow. Alternatively, you'll notice the Ike's Bikes logo that's here. This logo is an SVG logo. Let's go into the master and just look at these pieces. So this guy is SVG. Nice part is that SVG, aka Scalable Vector Graphics, means that I can come in and scale this guy within Muse to exactly what I want it to be. If I come to my social icon, it's pretty much a fixed size. I've defined this site as high DPI, so objects when they're placed are placed at about 50% of actual size, and for the most part, they're going to render pretty clearly. But if I were to resize this guy, it gets a little chunky because it's an image file. But there's an advantage to it. So if I were to come to the SVG, at the moment, if I come into my swatches panel and decide I want it to be green, you'll notice it's not changing the content, it's changing the background fill for that SVG object. If I want to apply color to elements, if they're images or text, I can do that more directly. So I'm going to come on in, and in my starter files, I've got some nice little graphic images here for social. So I'm going to go grab those. Let's go up a level. Grab a few of these guys, and I'll go ahead and place them. 1, 2, and 3. Now, they are black and white, pretty obviously. If I want to apply a color, and I'm still experimenting with color, you'll notice I've got a couple of named color values here. I've got this green, I've got yellow and gold, and sort of a putty color. What I can do as I'm working is come into these objects, and in the effects panel, I can go over there and click on glow, and notice I can select a color swatch. Let's say I want to go ahead and give it a go with that nice dark greenish bit there. Now it's doing a very bizarre thing, but you shouldn't panic. Go on into opacity and set that to 100. And in blur, I think you can go up to 250 for the blur value. The last thing you want to do is click on the inner glow checkbox there. Now that's a pretty subtle change, but it's gone in and applied the color. If I grab something like the yellow color, it's pretty clear to see that it has applied that yellow. So as you're working as a designer, let's say you're working with your client and you're experimenting with 3 or 4 different color sets. What you can do is come on in to any named color. So notice when I roll over this, it's called Ike's Yellow. It's not an RGB value. If I come on into the swatch options, there is a value here. I can see the hex value. And notice if I change it to name with color value, that's going to be tied to the color. What I don't want to do is do that. I want to give it a random name. And Ike's yellow is pretty specific. So if I were to change it to a shade of blue, the name would be wrong. So you may want to call it color 01 or color 02. When I click OK, though, notice that anything that has been tagged with that inline glow changes. You also can very easily, to kind of bring that back, go into your graphic styles and save it out as a new color style so that you can go in and easily apply that inline glow. So for things like scroll effects and effects, when you get them just right, let's say you have the perfect shadow that you love, save it out as a style. If you change your mind, any change will instantiate across all instances in the site. And as you make that change, it's just very easy to apply to all of them by just applying that style. All right, that's kind of 2 down, but many still to go. Let's see, that's all the 9s. Looking for 8s here, got no 8s. We're slipping down to, I think, 4. So slideshow with categories via nested widgets. We talked about this a little bit at the top of the hour, depending on what you're looking for. Let me just show you this real quickly. I'm going to come on out. Let's get rid of everything else on the page. Make life simple. Or let's revert it. It's nice to have a little bit of header and footer in there. And I'm going to drag a new page up here. And let's go on in and interact with this. So let's assume for the moment Ike has a photo gallery for both parts and full-on completed bikes. What you want to do, I have to think for a minute because it confuses me for a second. What I'd like to do is have basically a slideshow for bikes and a slideshow for parts. So one of the beauties behind the widgets within Muse is that on their own they're very powerful, but coupled together they can be amazingly powerful. So if I wanted to get to that place, let me just show you how you would assemble this. We're not going to fine-tune it, but we will assemble it rather quickly. So in the widget library, I want to begin with what's called a composition widget or a trigger target widget. Another real quick tip that you may not have caught up on, I think we delivered this in February of this year, is when I take any of these widgets out, let's go ahead and take a pretty detailed widget. I even say annoyingly detailed. So I'm going to press and drag this trigger target widget onto the canvas. What we've done is we give you text and images. They're grayscale to be kind of simple, but the intention was to let you understand that you could use a trigger target widget to create a presentation or a slideshow with triggers and targets. That's really great from a learning standpoint, but it can be an amazing hassle to try to remove all of the up, over, down, active, color, fonts, styles that have been applied to this. So we've added a new feature for any of our widgets. If I come in and select it, I'm going to go up to the parent level. So I'm at the root here where it says composition. And if I right-click on that, I can clear all styling and clear all widget contents. Now this trigger target, you notice there's 1, 2, 3. If I say clear the contents, it brings it down to just 1 trigger and 1 target. I can go further and say clear all styling. It'll take away all the background fills, any typographic application that might have been applied to that object. I've pretty much emptied it out pretty well here to kind of show what I want to show. And as I mentioned, this may not be amazing. I'm going to come in, it's not going to be amazing functionally. Sorry, jumbling my words. It's not going to be amazing visually, but it will be functionally amazing. So Ike wants to come on in here and have bikes. And I'll go ahead and dupe it and be a little lazy. And we're going to have parts. What I want to do very simply is go on in and apply these. So I'm going to make it kind of small. When you're dragging objects into containers, the container will grow to the size of the content you're dragging into it. So you always want to make sure your container is probably as small as you can get it, just to make it easy, and that your content is the size you really want it to be. So I now have, believe it or not, 2 triggers and targets. You can't tell that that's changing because they're pretty much styled the same. But I'm going to press and drag bikes into that first category. Notice how it grew to fit the text. Parts I'm going to drag into that second category, and that also grows to fill the text. So I now have 2 categories. What I want to do at this point is come on in and just grab either a composition widget again, where I can apply slideshow-like attributes, or I can even take a full-on slideshow. So if I take a basic slideshow, Notice I'm kind of playing it safe. Widgets have gotten a lot better at talking to one another, but they can be a little precious. They're pretty complex, and things get complicated pretty quickly as you're working. So I'm going to keep it off on the side here and configure it the way I want it and then put it into position. To be really honest, I'm going to go ahead and allow the default state to be here. This is pretty much fine. So I'm going to come and grab this guy, and once again I'm going to make my container smaller than the content I'm dragging in. Come on in and drag that first slideshow into position. Actually, before I do it, let's do this just so that we can show off this concept a little bit more. I'm going to come in with that slideshow, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to go grab a couple bikes images here, just so that there's a variance. 1, 2, 3 little random bike images. Drop them into my area. You'll also notice magically when we create widgets, we automatically delete the default images. The way you would do that if it's a widget of your own would be to come on in there and say clear widget content, and it would empty out those default images such that I could come in and grab a few different gears here and drop that into a gear area. So I've got bikes and I've got parts. In the bike instance now, I'm going to come on in and drag this first slideshow. Parts instance, I'm going to grab the next slideshow and drop that into position. And now I basically have two different categories that have slideshows that play here. I had put into the chat, and I honestly don't know if anybody voted for it. I think they did, which is how to stop breaking your design with 100% width objects. This was a feature we've had for a while, and we found that, so 3 of you voted for it, we do get to talk about it. We found that when you used to do it the original way, and that is specifically, let's say I have this slideshow, and what I want to do is have the hero area be what's known as a 100% width object. I can come and drag right here to the edge, and drag again to the edge of my page. And you'll notice as I drag, the line turns red, letting me know I've hit that edge. What happens though as you're designing is it's really easy to drag off that edge and kind of break that structure. So what we allow you to do is there's a cute little icon here that I tend to forget about from time to time and sure have trouble finding, that allows you to pick any object and toggle on or off that 100% width setting. So I'll go in and I've got a container under here that I'm going to drag into place. But by toggling that, I'll know it'll stay on and it can keep from breaking the design. But I now kind of have two different, very badly designed, but hopefully you get the point, slideshows here. Let's get my container back in, that I can toggle. So you could have different categories and then content that's here. Now, I think there's value to a little bit of a shout out. I'm going to go and show in Cookie land here. So cookie.com, let's see if I get here quickly. Ali Pordelli of Cookie, and I believe that Muse Themes has just come up with something pretty similar. There's this smart slideshow. So let's go in and try to take a look at it. If we look at it in preview mode, haven't been here in a while, we'll see how it looks. It's using this idea of categories. Ali Pordelli is putting an overlay here to allow you to create content that is what he's calling responsive, but it is allowing you to resize content on the page using some widgets that he develops. But if I come in and just look at the grid system that he has, this is a more sophisticated way that you can come in and build some of these nested slideshows with categories. You'll notice it's probably even a heavier load as I load into this guy. Let's see. I want to take a simple instance of this. This is what happens when the world changes underneath you. Let's try this guy. He has changed it on me, so I'm going to defer for a moment. But I encourage you to come in and poke around What he tends to do is allow you to come in and define different category groups. So you have one widget for all the categories, another widget for the slideshows for each of those categories. And based on how you're tagging them, it's very easy to switch between them and also have some nice CSS animations between those slideshows and the categories that he's defining. So definitely worth a look there if you want to dive a little more deeper into some of those sort of special effects with categories and slideshows. Let's see. Looking at my number 3s now, we've got, let's see, an expandable menu. I'm going to show you this again in its basic sense. I think folks have grown accustomed to this approach, but it's not always the easiest thing to intuit. One thing that I also like is keyboard commands. So when I'm working on my desk, I have 2 monitors, and a lot of times I'll have panels on one monitor and I'll have windows on another monitor. When I present to you, though, I have one monitor. I can't really split it out and share my screen. So I like the keyboard commands a lot more in that case. Let's say I'm working on a design and I want to jump between, if we go back to our site plan, one of my new favorites is Command M. It's been there for a while, but I pretty much started using it a lot lately. Command M is going to take you back to plan mode. What I can do is, let's say I was copying content in my alternate layouts from the About page for my desktop to the About page for my phone. I can type Command J, or jump is how I tend to think of it. And I'm going to type About, and you'll notice that I can jump to either the desktop version or the phone version of the site. I'll go ahead and jump to the desktop version. It's going to open that up. I can always Command M back to my site plan, or I can jump back over to that About page once I have it open. If I hit Command J again and I go ahead and type in About, I'll go ahead and bring up that phone layout and click OK. I can now jump between the two very easily. So if I were copying content from one page to the other, go ahead and copy and paste between the two. I just like those keyboard commands. So it's on the tips and tricks list for today. Now that we're here in the phone layout, I want to talk about how you can have some of these hiding menus. Now, as I mentioned at the very top of the hour, I haven't installed my phone simulator Xcode for Apple yet. So we're just going to use the in-app preview here for Muse, which will be fine for what we're going to do. You'll notice in my phone layout here, I've got what they call a hamburger menu. So I guess we've got the bun and the meat. But a hamburger menu tends to indicate this idea of a menu that can expand. So the expand and collapse state of these very small menus and these very small devices that we seem to be designing for today for mobile. So if I click on that, in this instance, it's bringing up a light box that has a close box here. But that's one example of how I can add navigation into a very small window like a phone layout. Let's look at another way that I could do that, and then we'll look at how they're both constructed. So let's do this. I'm going to hit the Command M key, get back to my phone layout, and I'm just going to create a new page. I'll go ahead and drag my interior. Let's do this. We also did talk about, while we're here, a little bit around master pages and inheritance. As you build out your site, I think your goal as a designer is to try to have one instance of everything you possibly can, so that when you go to make changes, those changes permeate throughout the site. And the idea behind master pages is that you can have multiple masters that inherit from one another. So if you look at this design for a moment, I've got a master page. It's kind of funny. I've noticed that designers more and more can't help but design around the color space of Muse. So a number of the designs we've had of late seem to emulate the exact Muse colors here. I'm going to do something to actually combat that for a moment. I'm going to change my color theme to something a little different. I'll go lighter. What that allows me to do is see the actual page. So what actually Christopher Watson, who worked on this with me, did is he's gone in and he's created a master page, and I can see all the master elements. If I jump back to my site plan, the interior master is actually not inheriting anything. But as I work, I could have inheritance. So notice that interior master has no inheritance, and there's elements that are separate in the design. Let's try to take a different approach here and see if we could get a little closer to having one instance for all the content. I'm going to come into the interior master, and let's assume for a moment that in the design I want a logo up here in that top corner. So I copy and then paste into place. And let's just see. For these elements, I'm going to go ahead and just delete them. I want to have a very simple, let's say this is my landing page for my design. For my interior, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this Dani Interior. I want to have a header that's different than the landing area that has no header. Notice here for that landing, I'm not using any of the header content, but then the interior pages would. What I can do is come into this master and right-click on it, and notice in the master area here, I can inherit any of the pre-existing masters. So I'm going to say, do me a favor, go ahead and inherit the A master, and then what I'll come on in and do is just create a nice little container. I'm going to press and drag it here. I'm going to give it a nice fill color. Gosh, I have not changed the colors in Muse in a long time. I don't know what application I'm in suddenly. So I've got a fill color. I'm going to go ahead and use that 100% width tool. It's shocking how different Muse is looking to me right now. It's pretty funny. Press and drag this guy out, and then I'm going to paste those elements that I had. I would probably change this guy so that you could actually see it, but we're going to be lazy for the moment and do an odd design technique with that fill. I'll go ahead and pick on fill color here, lighten that up a little bit, and I'm going to grab these guys and press and drag them into the header area. Again, this is not about fashion, it's about function. But what I was able to do, if I go back now, I've got a master that's inheriting the footer elements. Can't really tell here, but when I zoom on down, my footer is common between the two designs. I also have a little hamburger menu down there. We're going to get back to that, I promise. And this is inheriting from the first. So if I quickly came in and wrecked this design, let's say I apply that master to the main one, and then I apply this interior master to some of these other pages. As I'm working, if I come on into the interior master and say, wow, you know, that footer has a ton of space in this area, I really want to change it. Rather than having to change it on two different masters, let's go ahead and delete this one. Now we'll leave it, it's okay. I can come to the main master, tighten things up a little bit and say, you know what, I'd like this to be a little tighter. I'm going to bring all those up, bring them down a little bit, maybe not. Play with my footer. But any change that I come in and make, grab these guys. So subtle changes, but if you look really quickly, depending on how nice Connect is, when I go back to my main design, it's going to not only change the main master, but it automatically applied those change, that inheritance to any other master that inherited the footer master. Hope that makes sense. Okay. We're talking about hamburger fonts, or how to build this reveal sort of technique. Let's go on in here and look at some of the options that we do have for menus. I'm going to come in. You can also change things or override master attributes. So I'm still inheriting the footer from my main master, but I've decided the background fill should be something different. I've changed it to be white. And I'll go ahead and clear out elements that I don't want here. We'll go ahead and keep Ike's Bikes here. Let's say I want to have different sorts of reveal-like menus in my very constrained mobile design. What I can do, this is kind of going to be simple, and you'd be like, yeah, I got it, Dani. In my site, I have navigation. Let's go change the colors of this back because it's so odd to me. We'll go there. Okay. I'm going to go into my menus, and I want to use a menu. I'll go ahead and grab a vertical menu and press and drag it on the canvas. So there's all of the pages on my site, including Untitled 7. As we know, I could come into this object and clear all styling, and it's going to come on and give me very basic stuff that I could then go into my own paragraph styles and pick something that's been designed pretty well. We'll do... heck, I don't know. That's a little large. It's a little disappeared. We'll go with body copy. Oh, try my body copy guy here. That's funny. It's the same exact color, so it seems to disappear. But if I drag it here onto the page, there we go. Kind of make this guy a little smaller and better behaved. But I, in essence, have a dynamically generated menu that I can work with. What I want to do is, that's a big menu to have on my mobile design. So I want to kind of get it out of the way when I don't need it. And there are a number of widgets from the widget template developers that really play with this. I encourage you to go. We didn't talk about that yet, but if you are in your library, it's probably the easiest way to get there. When you select nothing, so select none of the libraries you might have, click on Find More Library Items Online. And this is the widget directory. We do not sell anything here. We simply ask those that are developing widgets for us to let us know about it so that we can direct you there. There are drop-downs here for free. There's drop-downs here for menus specifically, which may or may not be free. But there's lots of different ways that folks have played with some of these menuing styles. But I'm going to show you a little bit about how that's constructed. So what I can do is take this dynamic menu, and I now want to have it be available, basically. So a way that I can do that, pretty simple, is I'm going to go grab that composition widget, one of the most powerful widgets, I swear, that we have. I'm going to press and drag it on the canvas. I'm going to, as you know already, probably clear all styling and clear all widget content. Now, another wonderful thing we've added of late is if I hit Control-Command-H, it allows me to see all of the containers, even if I remove all of the styling. So I've got a trigger and I've got a target here. I'm going to move my whole widget off just a little bit here, drag my trigger and put it into this location, and then I'll go ahead and just put my target here just below. What I'd like to do is have that little hamburger approach. Now, since it's high design, I'm going to come on in, and a lot of folks actually do it this way. I'm just going to draw a cute little container. I'll probably go in and make sure it's a height of 4 pixels, not too high. I'll go ahead and give it a fill. We'll go with black for the moment. Then I'm going to come on in and just repeat that. If I have smart guides on, I can make sure the spacing is the same between them. I may have them turned off here. No, looks like they're good. That's indicating that they're nice and evenly spaced. If it's a little too tight, I can always bring it down, select all of them. If I'm lucky, should have just kept them tight. Yeah, I can select them all, and using the spacing panel, I can always distribute them, not spacing, the align panel, I can distribute the spacing evenly if I wanted to spread that out a little. I don't want to waste too much time here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that container intact. And what I want to do is have it such that the position can be staggered. It doesn't really matter because I'm only going to have one trigger and one target. I'm going to go ahead and make the target much smaller. Put my menu inside of that. So it's now a little larger. And I'll decide where I want this behavior to be. Go ahead and get that nice and tight. I can take my target and squish it so that it fits there better. And select that whole group. And I might have it. You'll notice I'm going to do something a little dangerous here. I'm going to put it right on top of it. And to be truly highly fashionable, let's go ahead and give it just a little bit of a fill color. I know, high fashion. My target's gone away, which is kind of a bad thing. So what I want to do is come in and make sure that I have triggers on top selected. That's going to make sure that the trigger, the hamburger menu, is present. I'm also going to go on in and say show target on rollover, so I don't have to click, I can just roll over there. And then under hide target, on rollout of trigger and target. This is really powerful. So if my target, right now my target has links. If it was such that the minute I rolled off of my hamburger to go to, let's say, services, the menu disappeared, I'd be in trouble. So hiding on rollout of trigger and target makes sure that I have time to actually interact with it. So with that kind of quickly done, let's go ahead into the preview mode. Now I didn't do one thing. I'd have you raise your hand and tell me what I didn't do, but I can't because we're not in the same room. What I didn't do is select hide all initially. And I can even say show it all in design mode or not, so I can see what I'm doing. But if I go into preview mode, notice that my little hamburger is there. All I need to do is roll over and I'll see my elements. Now I may have it such that obviously with these guys on top of each other, I probably would move them out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Probably get this guy down and keep it present. Get the little hamburger back up on top. So that's an example of just fading between the two. Sometimes you'll see there are options to actually slide. So when it appears, rather than transition of fade, I can come in, let's see if I make this guy stacked. I can come in and select horizontal or vertical in my transition. And when that happens, you'll get a swipe, let's say from left to right, to horizontally show the content in that menu. Okay, I'm going to come back, see how chat is doing, and then we're going to go back to the list. Someone says no sound. Hopefully you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, let me know. If there is no sound, it has more to do probably with your connection. And tell me that you guys can hear me. I did a jam session for like 15 minutes with no one can hear me. All right, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Valerie. Let's go back to the list. All right, let me just read here for a second around creating a menu with a submenu. All right, I'm going to assume chat's kind of jumped into that one a little bit because it's kind of having to do more with the categories and main galleries. Let's see what we've got on our list. We've done the expandable mobile menu. We've done the 100% with toggle. So we have some time for some of these others as well. Here's some of the ones. I think I did see a vote on this, but this was not clear to me when I first started using Muse, and I think it's a really powerful thing to understand. So let me go into my site plan here, and I'm going to actually start from scratch. It's going to make life a little easier. So I've got a site here. I've got a home page. Let's say I have products. I have services. And I have blog. Now, many of you know we've been promoting this of late, and I'm going to show you some really nice widgets towards the end here that we've been developing. But let's say in my design, I do want to have a menu, and I do want to have a blog, and I actually also want to have a full-on store. And for both instances, store and blog, rather than embed it within Muse using widgets, I probably want to, in this case, go out and just fully design, let's say, a Shopify store to look like Muse. But I want that menu to be very consistent. I'll show you a perfect example of this in action. So if I go back to the Adobe Muse website, I've got a landing page here, depending on my load time. And I've got a tutorials page, all good. You'll notice we added the widgets page here. Now it's in my menu, but I'll be honest, I did not want to maintain the widget directory and have all sorts of, we've got a few thousand widgets in there now. So what we're using is actually a back-end store. We're using Shopify as a back-end CMS that allows us to maintain this catalog of items. It allows us to search and sort and have popularity tags, things of that sort. So I want to use another service, and I've skinned it to look like Muse, and I want it to seem cohesive, but look at my menu here, or my URL. That's musewidgets.com. If I jump back to events, it's muse.adobe.com. So what I'm able to do is actually link to a very different site without a problem within the design. So the way I would do that really quickly is in my master, I'm going to go ahead and grab my menu. So I'll go to the widget library and go to the menus area and drag, let's go for a horizontal menu. In this instance, drag it into place, and we'll let the default styling stick with it since it's so stylish. All right, well, this is all good. I want to do, let's just show two different bits of sophistication here real quick. I've got a products area. I might have, as you know, services, and parts. Let's see what I did there. That's interesting. I guess I already did that, people. Let's drag this guy as a child page under products. And let's add a second page, which is going to be parts. All right, I want to show you two different menuing things that are nice. Under products, as a designer of the website or as the client, Ike, they may not want to create a page that says, here's the variety of products we have available. but they might want to allow you to jump to a services page or a parts page without having to design a products page. There's a way I can do that. So if I come into the master, I'm going to select my menu here. I'm going to make sure that parent and child hierarchy is reflected. So instead of top level pages, I want to see all pages. And it's not the most stylish thing, but what can I tell you? I have the services and parts sub pages. Now what I want to do is think for a moment. Yeah, I'm going to come back into my master. And the first thing I want to do is make sure that when anyone clicks on the blog, you'll notice that the menu is dynamically generated. And as you know about dynamic menus, you can come in and automatically have the pages redirect to one another. So if I were to come in and say preview this site in the browser, out of the box by default, Muse keeps track of all of my pages. So if I go in, you won't see much change here. It says index because we haven't designed it. But if I click on the products page, it takes me to a products page. If I click on blog, it takes me to the blog page. What I want to do is keep that in the menu, but I want to choose which page it goes to. The way you'll do that is under blog, right-click here, and select menu items or menu options and select exclude page, not from menus, but include page without the hyperlink. It's going to include that page in the menu hierarchy, but interestingly enough, allow me to change that hyperlink. So I'm going to click on it, and then I want to show you how the behavior is a little bit different. If I go down into my master and I click on the home page, so I click once, click twice to get to that home page element in the menu. No matter where I look here, I cannot see the hyperlinks window. That's because it's being dynamically generated based on the site plan. If I click on blog now, remember I said exclude it, include it in the menu, but exclude the hyperlink. By clicking on that, I can now come in here and say www.muse widgets.com. So I was able to create an exception there. I also can come into my products page and I can have it be either excluded from the menus if I don't want it there at all, or I can exclude it without a hyperlink as well, so that when people interact, they can go to services or parts, but they're going to skip the product page. All right, I want to go back to our list just for a moment, and then I want to show you a little bit about some widgets on our way out the door. Let me just see. So name swatches, we kind of covered that when we were talking about icon sets. Slider between RGB and HSB, maybe everyone already knows this, but it was news to me. We changed our color swatches when we went native, when we rebuilt the application as a 64-bit app. And I missed the days when I could come in and change, let's say, the brightness of my colors here. A way to do that is if you come into the, let me just see this real quick. If I come over here, let's try this guy, and I go into a color. Notice this menu that I've got in this area. This allows you to switch between RGB and HSB, so that depending on how you're thinking or looking, if you're HSB, it's just easier to say, just lighten it up for me so it's not so dark. I struggle with that. You'll notice I forgot for a moment. So the swatches panel doesn't have it, but the fill panel does. Let's see, any other pains that I've had. Placing Photoshop files, there was an ask for that. What I'll say just in brief is when you come in to place content, so I said file place here. For, let's say, I'm going to go to the starter files because I know they have them. In the assets directory under icons, you'll notice I have a series of icons, and many of them are PNG files. But just to kind of show this, I have a file that's a Photoshop file, a PSD. And in that PSD file, I've named each of the layers with a unique name. If I select that PSD file, I get this nice import feature. I can either import the whole thing as a pile, which would be awful, or I can import an individual layer. It's kind of hard to tell, but these are white and black icons. I have a nice close icon here. So I can select that as an importable layer, and I want to clip to the layer contents and click OK. And as I work, it just allows me to very easily have a whole series, a whole set of designed elements that as I place them, they're in a layered Photoshop file. If you're a designer that likes to comp your work out in Photoshop before you build it in Muse, this makes things very, very easy to bring all of your photographic elements over from your design. If you clip to the container and place, it's still going to place things in relationship to one another, but clip to its appropriate content. All right, we're almost out of time. The other thing I did want to mention, I don't know if Chris Kellett is still hanging with us on the line, but I work with Chris lately on a particular task. This was something that's been bugging me probably for 6 months. And the idea is that, and I'm going to go ahead and give you this in the chat, if I can get back there easily, and then I will explain it. Okay. So, where's my brain? Here. The basic premise is that when new users use Muse like Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign, you say File New, you get a blank page. And I think it's very easy to not really realize all the things you can do in Muse, how powerful the application is. So what we've done, oh, you know what? We already covered this. Having one of those days. We talked about starter files and their context. What I want to do is talk about something else. And that is a site called Nomad Dreamers. And I will give you the URL for this. And come back to my chat. All right, the idea behind Nomad Dreamers, now that I'm present, is lots of folks will say, hey, can I use Muse to build a blog, shopping cart, gallery, to embed a form that has a browse button, many, many different things. And we don't always have a good place to point people to. You can go to the directory, you can sniff around, you can see if there's a widget that seems to do it, and look to the vendor for that. But this is a site that we will use for new users. It is a free site that can be downloaded and interacted with. All of the widgets on this site are free. Chris Kellett built the widgets. Ali Pordelli with Cookie was responsible for the content of the site. But it's a really nice way for you to just understand widgets as you're working. So if I go to the audio section, actually if I start a little higher here, we've got a background full screen video. This is streaming from Vimeo, I think in this case. Could be Vimeo or YouTube. You just, in the widget, punch in the URL for the video. You can go get the widget by clicking here. It's going to take you to the directory. The directory has a few valuable bits. It's got an online tutorial. This will be localized into the languages that Muse supports. We're working on that right now, so give us a bit of time, a month or so, and we should have that localized. It's also technical support. This is a hotline to Chris Kellett if you have questions around the video and how it works. But they are all there, and you can freely interact with them. You can use this as a teaching tool with new users. We have a very simple audio player widget. We have a carousel gallery widget. The intention here, as usual, is not to compete with all the amazing widgets that, for what I think of as pocket change, compared to your designing billable hours, you can download widgets from the community that do some of this, but to be able to show really easily how you can integrate a store. So I have a Shopify store here. I could come in and check out actually within my Muse design and skin and style it in a similar way. One of the best ones, really amazing, if you've been hanging around the land of Muse for a while, is the RSS blog widget. In the past, if you wanted to say, let's take a Tumblr blog and use a widget to place it within Muse, that's fine because Tumblr's a great engine. It's easy for your site owner to update their blog. But the downside is anytime that site owner would make a change in the blog, Tumblr would get the SEO. It would get credit for having changed content. The widget that Chris has built here, this RSS blogging widget, allows you to take the blog content and inject it in your Muse design as an RSS feed. That means that when a change is made in the blog, a Medium blog, a Tumblr blog, even a WordPress blog, although there's some image limitations with WordPress, when those changes are made, the SEO credit goes to the Muse site because you're injecting that content as RSS. And Chris has allowed you to come in and easily style the look of it. I can integrate images and colors, control the look of that blog while having it feed. And lastly, we have a JotForm form widget here. So I encourage you to give it a try. Let us know what your thoughts are. I am done talking. I'm going to go ahead and go to the closing window. We're doing jam sessions now about every other week. We have not picked the topic going forward, so if you have ideas that you would like to have us talk about, we'll probably go back into the archives and pick something that was popular in the past. But go ahead and throw those ideas here in the lower right corner. If there were things that you expected me to cover today that I didn't, you're welcome to check that it fell below your expectations if you promised to put into the chat what you think we missed. And thank you everyone for sending us your sites, the site of the day, joining us on the pre-release community as we test new releases with the product, and being such loyal customers. Really, we've really had a great ride with Muse just 3 years old last week. So thanks everyone for your time. I'm going to stop, grab the recording link, and if you go to Facebook or go to the events page and you want to look at the YouTube recording that has good video, good sound, and watch that recording, those will be posted a little later today. All right, I'll be right back.